What do Elma, Jimmy, and Marcus have in common? They all grew their businesses with Fiverr freelancers. Whether it's for building a new e commerce store, seeking marketing or business consultation, boosting performance with a variety of AI services, or even if they're an architecture firm looking to get more work done, it's all made possible with Fiverr freelancers. Join millions of business owners already growing their businesses with Fiverr.
Hold on. Before you pay for yet another app to manage your team, let me introduce you to Connect Team, the one platform that replaces all of these. I'm talking about live scheduling, time tracking, and digital forms that help you stay in control. Use instant team updates and personal or group chats to communicate easily and effectively. So stop spreading your business across apps, whiteboards, binders, platforms. It's exhausting, it's expensive, and honestly, it's unnecessary. Join thousands of businesses that simplified employee management, cut costs in basically half, and got back the time to focus on what matters most. Start your free trial now at connectteam.com.
Good afternoon. I'm Anjanette Levy, and you are watching our live lunch show Q&A here on Law and Crime. We are covering the federal sex trafficking trial of Sean Diddy Combs. He is on trial in the federal courthouse in Lower Manhattan. That trial is underway right now. And now for a second day, we are hearing from Cassie Ventura. Of course, cameras are not allowed in the courthouse in Lower Manhattan. It's federal court. That's just the way it goes. But she is still on direct examination. And Cassie Ventura is really the star witness in the government's case. She was a longtime girlfriend of Sean Diddy Combs. She filed an explosive lawsuit back in November of 2023, accusing him of a number of sex crimes, emotional and physical abuse. And that led to this massive federal investigation. He is now facing racketeering charges, sex trafficking charges, and charges that include transporting sex workers for prostitution and actually transporting Cassie Ventura to engage in some types of prostitution as well. So there are other victims in this case, but right now, Cassie Ventura is on the stand again for a second full day, and she is on direct examination. And today they've really been focusing on what happened back in March of 2016. You've now seen that video, that horrific video of Cassie Ventura, where she was followed out of that hotel room by Sean Diddy Combs. As she says, she tried to leave one of those freak offs. It was a days-long sex party that Sean Combs would organize with male sex workers and Cassie Ventura. They would take drugs, and she says that Sean Combs would direct the sexual activities between her and these sex workers. So she was trying to leave that event, and he dragged her back to the room. He hit her. He stomped on her. It's very graphic. It's very disturbing. What Cassie Ventura talks about in her testimony is incredibly graphic and incredibly disturbing. We are going to discuss it, and we'll do it as sensitively as we can because we know how difficult this is for her and for the people watching this coverage. So I want to bring in some people who have been following this case very closely. Bradford Cohen is a criminal defense attorney, and he has represented a number of rappers and other people in the entertainment industry. Melba Pearson is a former prosecutor, and Tyler Bailey is a criminal defense attorney in South Carolina. Everybody, all of them have been following this case closely, as I mentioned, and we will be taking your questions too. So please drop them in our YouTube chat. We will get to as many of them as we can over the next couple of hours. and Law and Crime's Elizabeth Milner. She is in that courthouse in Lower Manhattan. She will be joining us here in just a bit to update us on everything that's been going on in the courtroom so far. So, Bradford, I'll start with you this morning. How powerful do you think it is for the jury to hear from Cassie Ventura?
Well, I mean, that's their star witness, right? So
Right.
it's number one is it powerful? Sure, it's powerful because of a couple things. You know, the graphic nature of her testimony, the way that she's presenting herself. She's 8.5 months pregnant. The kind of painting the picture that she was taken advantage of, and that all these things happened against her will. Obviously, everyone was expecting her testimony. To have it this early, I don't think is an advantage for the government. I think it's more an advantage for the defense, because usually you want to build up that suspense for this type of witness. This is your star witness. So you want to build up the suspense. You want to have other people testify first. You want to get used to what the cross is going to be, who's going to be crossing, what their techniques are when they're crossing individuals. So it's not a real advantage for the government to put her on first. I think they put her on first because they weren't sure about her pregnancy and when she was going to be giving birth. And they wanted to make sure they got her testimony. But I don't find this to be an advantage for the government. It's more an advantage for the defense. And like I said, once the testimony's out there from the government, all you hear is one side. So you haven't heard the cross-examination yet. And I think the cross-examination is going to be very powerful from the information that I know, from the information that I've heard about different things that she participated in, how she participated, the payments that were made, how the payments were made, and the organization of all of this. I think it's going to be very interesting the way the cross-examination takes place, and the strategy of who takes the cross-examination, who is going to be the individual from the defense party that is going to cross-examine her. And my guess is it's going to be either Temi Garagos or the young lady from Atlanta, who I think is very talented as well. Because I don't think one of the male defense attorneys would be able to get away with the questioning that's going to be necessary in order to prove that for the defense that she should actually be a co-defendant and not a victim in the case.
Well, you gave us a lot to talk about there, and you raised a lot of really good points, Bradford. So, Melba, I'll move over to you. Bradford's a criminal defense attorney. Melba, you were a prosecutor at one point in time. Bradford brings up a really good point there. Cassie Ventura is 8.5 months pregnant, so she could maybe go into labor at any time. But the government probably wanted to start off very powerfully and very strongly, and this is their star witness. So do you think it's not a good idea that they started off with Cassie Ventura? I mean, Bradford thinks they maybe should have waited.
Yeah, so I'm going to politely disagree with Bradford. I believe in the theory of primacy and recency. So I tried a ton of homicide trials. And again, you have to make sure that you're capturing the jury's attention. And this is somebody that the jury's been waiting for. So let's just give the people what they want. They want to hear from Cassie, and her testimony is actually going to set the stage for a lot of what's going to come afterwards. Because again, as rightfully stated, she is the star witness, and everything else that comes after that, in terms of the video, in terms of any other evidence, it still somehow centers around her. Even what happened with the administrative assistant, I believe she's going under the pseudonym of Mia. Anything that she has to say is also going to be likely corroborating everything that Cassie said. So when you start off with Cassie and then you have all of these other witnesses and all of this other evidence corroborating everything she says, then the prosecution can come back in the end and argue, listen, we started off with Cassie and this is how we've proved our case, boom, boom, boom. So you start strong and you end strong, and you bury the folks in the middle that may not add as much to the case as you would want.
And let's keep in mind, too, that Cassie Ventura was with Sean Combs the longest out of all of the women who will be named as victims in this case. I mean, she was with him for years and years. So this was a long-term relationship. I want to turn to Tyler now. Tyler, you're a criminal defense attorney, just like Bradford. We're talking about female attorneys, either Tenny Garagos or Nicole Westmoreland, who is the newest member of the team. She works with Brian Steele, I believe, down in Atlanta. one of those two women will be cross-examining Cassie Ventura. They're going to have to be very careful in how they approach her, but at the same time, they kind of have to be very aggressive too, because she is the government's star witness. So how do you see this going? Because they are going to say that she was involved in this, that she was a willing participant, this was consensual, and they're going to bring up the civil suit, I would assume, on cross-examination and say that she wanted money out of this.
Well, they're going to walk a real tight line when they cross-examine Ms. Ventura. Like we all know, she's 8 months pregnant right now, and she's a woman. Is going to be likely a woman who's going to cross-examine her. But if they start off too aggressive, they have a run the risk of turning the jury off really early in the case. There are other victims out there. They have to walk a real tight line to make sure they can score as many points where they can, but also make sure they don't turn off the jury by being overly aggressive and not being considerate of just everything that Ms. Ventura has gone through. I think the optics of her being pregnant goes in the favor of the prosecution. Just naturally, as a society, we like to protect women, especially pregnant women. So there could be some jurors who could get turned off very early if the defense comes off too strong early in the case.
Most definitely. I mean, it may not even be something the jurors really think about, but the pregnancy may have an impact on them. We're going to take your questions now, but just an update from court. The assistant U.S. attorney asked Cassie Ventura about the freak offs and other things. How did you feel? Ventura responded, trapped. The assistant U.S. attorney then asked, when you landed in New York, what did you do? And Ventura responded, we went to a dinner, then he wanted to have a freak off, so we had a freak off. The assistant U.S. attorney then asked another question, why did you do it? And Ventura said,
They have over 1 million quality parts
that are guaranteed to fit
at incredible prices.
and hassle-free returns.
Well, I guess you didn't need my help after all.
Nope, I just needed carparts.com.
Available at your fingertips 24/7.
Now that's my speed.
Quality parts, price right, carparts.com.
Sued to get out of their contracts with Sean Combs or Bad Boy Records. I know of a couple times that's happened, specifically that she stayed with him in order to finish her contract. I don't think that was the reason that she stayed with him, nor do I think the prosecutor is going to say that that was the reason she stayed with him, because she had a contract, a music contract with him. I think they're going to put on experts, and Melba knows this. Melba spent a very long time, and I know Melba very well, but she spent a very long time in domestic violence, and she knows there's going to be experts that are going to take the stand, that are going to say, hey, listen, this is what, when someone is manipulated, when someone is coerced, either physically or mentally, they feel they don't have the strength to leave, that they can't leave, that their mental stability is associated with the individual who they're with. And although, to us on the outside, just a normal person, and this is all coming from the prosecutor, of course, but just to a normal person, you'd think, hey, why wouldn't you get up and leave after the first time, the second time, the 50th time, the 75th time? I mean, she was with him for 6 or 7 years. Why wouldn't she just get up and leave after that? That's where those experts are going to come in, and they're going to say, hey, this is why she didn't leave. And I don't believe it's going to be tied to any kind of music contract. I think it's more likely going to be tied to the psyche of a young lady that was, has made the accusations that she was abused physically and mentally, and that's why she stayed with Sean Combs.
And Melba, there's a cycle of violence that domestic violence experts often talk about too. I mean, Cassie Ventura has already testified that she was in love with him. So not only was this a business relationship, but it was a romantic relationship as well.
Yeah, and that's of course makes things much more complicated, because usually you try to, in the best case circumstances, you want to keep your personal life and your professional life separate. But here's an instance where it's one and the same. And so now you've got the cycle of violence where you have a violent incident, then I would assume, because that's usually how it goes, the perpetrator, Diddy in this case, would be like, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to do it. Oh my gosh, the flowers, the jewelry, all the other things. I really love you. This is never going to happen again. And of course, the survivor, because they are in love with the person, continues in the relationship. And then there's a period of peace. It could be months, it could be weeks, it could be a day. It all varies based on the relationship. And again, over time, that cycle gets tighter and tighter, where more violent events start to happen in a shorter amount of time versus maybe in the beginning of the relationship where there might be a violent incident and then the next one hypothetically could be a month later. So the cycle is basically the violent event, apologies, a honeymoon period, a buildup, and then another violent incident. And so she's been testifying about how he's brutalized her, but then again, you see them out on the red carpet. You see, her with jewelry and cars and all of these things, which is basically kind of like blood contributions, right? Because he's trying to get her to stay with him and obviously not report and not tell everybody his business. And again, a lot of this we saw in terms of the lawsuit, how quickly he settled, because he knew what was all going to come out. And he knew once the public started to hear about this was going to be very destructive for him. And of course, the law enforcement investigation really took it over the top. So I think this is going to be very much centered on the battered person's experience and having those experts really explain to the layperson how these types of relationships work. Because again, it defies logic in a lot of ways. Why would you stay with somebody who beats you? Well, they don't beat you on the first date because there wouldn't be a second date. This is something where the relationship develops and then the violence.
Yeah. And Sean Combs's attorneys conceded in opening statements, yes, there was domestic violence in this relationship. I mean, they can't deny it. I want to give you a little bit of an update from court. There's been a lot of photographic evidence this morning that they took from Cassie Ventura's phone, and they've been introducing that through Cassie's testimony, showing photographs of Cassie Ventura's injuries to the jury. These were taken from her phone and other devices. In one exchange with the assistant U.S. attorney, they're showing an incident from Toronto. She said she put her hair over her eye to hide a bruise, and then they went to the Hamptons. She said that Sean Combs wanted to then have a freak off in the Hamptons, so they got a hotel and an escort. She said that the escort was named Dave. She took the drug GHB, and she went into a G-hole, which sounds like some type of blackout. She woke up and she was naked in the shower, and Dave and Sean were freaking out. I bugged out. It wasn't pretty, is what she said in the testimony. She said, then what? Ventura responded, I spoke to a friend of Sean's, and then we had a freak off. And then they showed another photograph, and it shows her eyebrow that had healed up a little bit a week later, and she has a permanent scar on her eyebrow, she said, from this. And she is shown another photo from the Cannes Film Festival. She said Sean accused her of taking drugs from his boat and threw her off of the boat, but her passport was still on the boat. She was on the red carpet for some type of event that night, and she said she attended the movie. They then went to New York. There was a commercial flight that they took. She traded her seat to get away, but he traded to get next to her. What did he show you? Freak off videos. So we've heard about this, him showing videos and then using that as kind of blackmail material, if you will. She said that he played the freak off videos for me on one of his laptops. He said he would release them. So that's some pretty compelling evidence, Tyler. How do you combat that as a defense attorney?
The only way I think this can be combated is shown that it was consensual. They're going to paint out Ms. Ventura as somebody who was in this relationship for her own benefit, whether it's her music career, modeling career, and any other perks that she got from being associated with Mr. Combs. That's the only thing I really think that the jury can try to do. And also say, well, look, the defense lawyers could try to do, and say if they were, of course, he was not acting as a good partner would be, but is this trafficking? Was she forced to have sex with different people, or was this something she engaged in under her own volition? I think that's the defense's best strategy here. But the sheer magnitude of the graphic testimony that we're hearing from Ms. Ventura, I believe, is probably laying a firm foundation in the minds of these jurors and understanding that there are going to be other victims who likely give testimony as well. So even if you think these things about Ms. Ventura, you're showing a pattern of conduct, of travel, hiring escorts, using illicit drugs, traveling internationally to feel some sort of what appears to be a sexual enterprise to feed Mr. Combs' own appetite for these things.
Bradford, we have another question from a viewer. This is Shelly Taylor. She asks, what about all of the people who covered for him? Why are they not charged? And that's a good question.
Sure. The answer is probably because they're going to be witnesses. There's no better way not to be charged in a criminal conspiracy than to cooperate with the government. And that's the difference between us, defense attorneys, and the government. They have such massive power to either grant immunity to witnesses, find witnesses that'll testify against you as long as they don't get charged. There's all these different ways that they can get testimony at an individual. So if I go and I list a bunch of defense attorneys, which defense witnesses that the defense attorneys have already done, I'm sure the prosecution goes out. They send an FBI agent to knock on your door. There's no better way to intimidate you than an FBI agent knocking on your door and saying, hey, I heard you're going to testify for Sean Combs. We'd like to talk to you. And when you tell them, no, I don't want to talk to you, suddenly you are then a target as well to see what your involvement in this investigation could be, to see what you did wrong. So the massive power of the government is always unmatched. Doesn't matter how much money you have. It is always unmatched by a defense attorney, no matter who the defense attorney is. And I say that, because I've been in it. I've experienced it. I've had clients that are high net worth individuals that still have hired investigators, prior FBI agents, all these individuals, and still the power of the government is unmatched in these type of cases because of their ability to send out FBI agents anywhere in the world within an hour's notice to get a statement from someone, to intimidate someone, to make sure that they testify for the government, to give immunity to individuals, to arrest someone that is unwilling to come in and testify. They can have the power of an arrest and then put them in front of the judge and say, hey, this individual said that they might not show up for a trial, judge, and we want to keep them in custody until they do. That's why they have a 99% conviction rate. Luckily for me, I've been able to work within that 1% many, many times. But that being said, that power is unmatched. You don't experience it, you don't understand it until you're sitting at that table with your defense attorneys and feeling how every single witness that's taking the stand made some sort of deal or some sort of cooperation, or they're given some sort of immunity to testify against you. And in this case, where there is a RICO charge and, he's the only guy in the RICO, it's very unusual that you see one individual in a RICO and not even unnamed co-defendants. And that's really the alley that the defense needs to go down, and I think they will, is that all these individuals could have been named co-defendants. They all enabled, they all knew what was going on. They all either helped procure these prostitutes, ordered 1,000 bottles of Johnson & Johnson baby oil. Certainly that wasn't because someone wanted to get a tan. And all these different things that were going on could not have occurred without the cogs in the wheel, in the machine, to keep that turning, including Cassie. And I think that's where the defense has to go with it. And yeah, is it a...
Today, every business needs a website, unless this is what your business looks like. But if it's not, you can find talented freelancers on Fiverr, from designers and web developers to SEO experts who can build your website from the ground up. Build your website today on Fiverr. Oh, looks like Seamus also has a website now.
Looking for Indy's nicest used car inventory?
Ray Skillman Used Car Supercenter is the place.
We have Chevy, Ford, GMC, Jeep, Dodge, Hyundai, Kia, Honda, and much more. Cars, trucks, vans, and SUVs. Yep, we have those too. Full vehicle history, financing options, and warranties are all provided on site. Come in now, only 2 miles south at the Greenwood Park Mall, or check us out online at rayskillmansupercenter.com.
take some responsibility. And it couldn't be that every time this happened, it wasn't without consent. That's where the defense is going to go. That's what I think is their strong point. And that's the only way to defend this case, is that you have to come out, I call it the velvet glove, right? You have to come out with a glove, right? You want to hit, but it has to be a velvet glove. It has to be a soft hit. So you can't be the Brad Cohen in this case. You have to treat each witness kind of with kid gloves until you can really trap them into a conversation where now you can demonstrate to the jury, this is why he or she is lying.
Well, we want to let everybody know that the jury has gone to lunch. So we should be able to check in with Elizabeth Milner in just a short time. She'll be able to tell us what exactly is going on in that courtroom, the reactions from the jurors, how Cassie Ventura is on the stand. Is she getting tearful today? We don't know. We know that she did get tearful earlier in her testimony. But let's get to some more questions right now. Melba, I'll send this next question to you. I don't know if they need to actually show these videos, but do you anticipate, and this question was from Marissa Monroe, are they going to show the freak off videos in court?
I think they will, but I don't think they're going to show all of them. I think they're just going to maybe show like a sampling. So again, Cassie can talk about and identify the sex workers that may have been involved, identify the locations, because again, in order for this to be a federal case, you've got to cross state lines. So if you have to establish that these activities happened in New York, happened in Miami, happened in California, that you were forcibly transferred or had to travel to each of these different locations. So the videos are going to be important from that perspective. But again, I don't think everybody's going to sit there and, watch, sex tape after sex tape after sex tape and watch Cassie be, basically raped and brutalized 10 different ways from sunrise. I don't see that happening, but I do see some snippets coming in. But I do got to say one more thing, because my inner prosecutor wants to go after what Brad said.
Yeah, I had a feeling Melba was going to have something to say about what Bradford was saying. So go on, Melba.
Yeah. But most importantly,
I think Melba's bringing the velvet hammer to you.
Oh,
Bradford, not a velvet glove, a velvet hammer.
Melba's fantastic.
So go on,
She's
Melba.
always been fantastic. I welcome it.
Well, one thing I will say, first of all, is that sadly, I think all of us know people who have stayed in abusive relationships for a lifetime. And we know people that have died as a result of domestic violence relationships. So that argument of, well, take responsibility, you should leave, et cetera, you don't leave until you're ready. And ready can mean a number of different things. Ready could mean you are emotionally ready to walk away from the person. Maybe it was one beating too far. Maybe you ended up in the hospital, whatever the case may be. She left him around 2018 and there's allegations of a sexual assault in 2018. Maybe he brutalized her one time too many and she walked away. It's not necessarily she's waiting for $50 million. She just needed to get her inner gumption together to be able to walk away. And also her coming forward, yes, later in life, but a lot of times, again, it's because you have enough space away from the person and you feel strong enough in your own life. You have money, you have a roof over your head. Your survival is not tied to your abuser. And now you feel strong enough to come out and talk about it. You've seen what happened with Harvey Weinstein, Jeffrey Epstein, so many survivors. That's why we had to have the Adult Survivors Act that allows people to come back and be able to address these claims decades sometimes after the fact, because again, that emotional healing is not a linear thing. It takes a while to get out of these relationships and then feel strong enough to be able to go through the entire court process, especially sharing the most horrible, degrading things that can happen to you as a human being, and sharing it in front of people you don't know, sharing it in front of your partner, sharing for all of us to sit there and analyze it. That's tough. That's not an easy thing to do. And some survivors are never able to do.
Yeah, you're most definitely right, Melba. And they have to be ready. They have to be ready. And often at times there's a lot of fear. So we are going to get back to the questions here in just a few moments. Stay with us, everybody. Keep dropping your really great questions into the YouTube chat. We are going to take a quick break, but before we do, we wouldn't be able to do this show without the support of the viewers, of course. You guys are the most important part of this, but also we have really great sponsors. And one of them is Morgan and Morgan. They're a terrific law firm that helps people who've been hurt in accidents and all kinds of things. And in the past few months alone, Morgan and Morgan has won some really big verdicts. There's been a $6 million verdict for a car crash victim in Florida, a $13 million verdict for a wrongful auto death in Georgia, and another $6 million for a trucking accident in New York. And this was after the insurance company offered their clients significantly less in each of these cases. So if you think your case isn't worth millions and millions of dollars, that doesn't matter. You can still start a claim and fight for what you deserve. And they make it really easy. You can use your cell phone to start a claim in just 8 clicks. So if you're ever hurt, try it out. Start a claim at forthepeople.com/LC Live. You can also do it by clicking the link. It's below, and you can scan the QR code that you see on your screen. So we will take a quick break. As I said, stay with us. Drop your questions in the YouTube chat. And when we come back, we are going to be joined by Law and Crime's Elizabeth Milner. She has been in the courtroom throughout the duration of this case and during the trial, and she's going to update us on what's been happening this morning. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
RaySkillmanCars.com. Let our family help your family find your new car.
Shop from over 4,000 new and used vehicles from one convenient location.
Get pre-qualified in minutes and customize your budget. Good credit, bad credit, or no credit at all. That's not a problem here. We can help.
Find the value of your current vehicle in seconds with our quick, no-hassle trade tool.
Superb selection, unbeatable prices with flexible financing.
And we'll even deliver the car to you. Join the Ray Skillman family today at RaySkillmanCars.com.
Buy your tickets at Ticketmaster. Because whether it's the dribbles or the drip, the NBA is always better IRL.
But now we are going to check in with Law and Crime's Elizabeth Milner. She has been in the courthouse the entire time. Throughout the duration of this case, she's been to every hearing and she's been there for the trial every day. She has been in the courtroom. So, Elizabeth, I'm really interested to hear from you about what's been going on this morning in the courtroom. Some really compelling testimony. I've been reading online that the jurors have been seeing some photographs from Cassie Ventura's electronic devices that show maybe some bruising and some other things like that from injuries says she suffered at the hands of Sean Combs.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of a majority of what the focus was on today. We saw a lot of exhibits in front of the entire gallery, as well as the jurors, too. A lot of text messages, a lot of photographs, either photographs from the red carpets after, physical abuse that Cassie was talking about during her testimony today. We saw text message exchanges between Cassie and Diddy, who, in some text messages, he's referred to as the name of Pop, and Cassie is referred to as baby girl in these types of text messages. And so that was kind of a lot of focus of what this morning has been so far. Cassie is still under direct examination by the prosecution. She's being questioned by ASA Emily Johnson. Diddy today appearing in a different color today. He had a cream sweater on, a white undershirt. He had gray slacks on, whereas Cassie, she had a nice, a very gray long dress on. She came in with a black trench coat. Whenever she had walked over to the witness stand, it was kind of the same situation as it was yesterday. She didn't look over to the defense's side. She didn't eyeball Diddy from what I could see of her walking up to the witness stand. It seems like she was just laser focused on getting there, sitting down. The jury would be brought in afterwards. They would sit down. She would kind of, look at their direction, definitely not looking at the defense's direction. And from what I could see, even during her line of questioning, it seemed that she was just, again, laser focused on just answering the prosecution's question. She kept her eyes on the prosecutor, again, that being Emily Johnson, while she was asking her questions. A notable thing that I also saw while sitting inside the courtroom today is that, Diddy's support looked a lot different today. Normally we're seeing his entire family members. We're seeing some of the mothers of his children come into that courtroom. And today was a little different. Today it was just Christian Combs, aka King Combs, Justin Combs, Quincy Brown, Janice Combs, Diddy's mother. But notably, none of his daughters were inside that courtroom today. They had been there Monday and Tuesday, but not sure if maybe it was the rain that didn't bring them in today, or maybe it was the fact that they knew, Cassie would be testifying for a couple more days, and just kind of the graphic nature of her testimony. They were just kind of like, let's not come today. But that is some big standouts that I definitely noticed while sitting in the gallery today.
This is some really graphic and difficult testimony. And Sean Combs's daughters, I mean, these are young women, teenagers in some instances. And I mean, this has got to be difficult for them to hear. A woman, these are graphic sexual details, physical abuse, drug use. I mean, these are really difficult things to listen to. And this is their father. And this is another woman. So this has to be difficult for them to hear. And I think I was reading the other day, Elizabeth, that they actually walked out at different points during some of the testimony.
Yeah, they walked out specifically during Daniel Phillips' testimony. He is one of the escorts that Cassie had spoken about as far as being involved in the freak off, someone that they would use pretty often. And so during that time, especially when it came to like you had said, Anjanette, just some of those graphic details. Sometimes I really kind of get lost in just all the notes that I had because at this point I'm already on notebook 2 from this trial, and we're only on day 3. So a lot of stuff kind of going on. But yeah, for the most part, it is a lot of hard details to kind of listen to. Look, I'm older than Diddy's daughters. I am older than Cassie was when she had met Diddy. And even for me, myself, it was very hard to kind of listen to that testimony. I recorded a sidebar yesterday, and there was just a moment that I had to take myself because, just to kind of hear from her perspective and kind of, the physical abuse that she says she endured during her relationship with Diddy. Because even as somebody, like myself, who was always on social media, always following pop culture, always kind of invested in, what is going on with celebrity lives, for a long period of time, it seemed like they were this quote unquote picture perfect couple. Every time you would see them, Cassie would appear very happy. Diddy was always on her arm. They were traveling all around the world. They were taking private jets. They were doing, just essentially living the high life. But then hearing this graphic testimony, hearing that, after a red carpet premiere that she would have to go and do a freak off, hearing that, on a birthday where she just wanted to hang out with her friends and do karaoke, things like that, because she was in her early 20s to late 20s when this relationship was going on. And it seems like she, from her perspective, just wanted to live like any normal 20 something where, she would spend time with her boyfriend. She would only be intimate with her boyfriend, but at her boyfriend's direction, which is something that she had talked about throughout the duration of her testimony, that she participated in these freak offs because that made Diddy happy. That was something that he fantasized about. That was something that she essentially wanted to do to please him. And so, just hearing through all of that, it is very hard to kind of digest that and unpack it. And as much as people may say, like, I don't understand how Elizabeth can deal and listen to all of this, I don't understand how Cassie can testify to all of this because it is so graphic, and I can only imagine how she feels having to do this in in the general public, having to talk about doing freak offs when she had UTIs or when she was on her menstrual cycle or that type of sort. It's very, very graphic details that she is laying out while the prosecution is questioning her.
I'm sure it's just got to be traumatic for her to relive this. I'm wondering, Elizabeth, from your vantage point in the courtroom, how is the jury, if you can get a good look at them? Because I know it's sometimes in these courtrooms, you're trying to look around, it's crowded, you can't always see, and sometimes jurors are very stoic. But are you able to see the jurors and see if they are reacting at all? Is there any facial expression that you can see from them as they're listening to Cassie and as they see that awful hotel video from 2016?
Well, the hotel video the jurors had already seen even as early as Monday. And so that was something that they were very familiar with. As far as, reactions, there was no visible reactions from what I could see. I couldn't see anyone necessarily, wiping away tears. From the most part, I saw, some jurors were taking their notes down. Some jurors were, because whenever the exhibits are shown, they're displayed on a screen right in front of them, very much intently analyzing these messages, looking at them, looking at the contents of it. Because in addition to the messages that we saw, even the red carpet photos that we saw, we also saw photos of Cassie with a fat lip, as she had called it. It was bruised, it was swollen, as you could tell from the photograph. We saw her with a cut on her eyebrow that she had to go to a plastic surgeon at Diddy's direction so that way they could get it fixed. You see photos of her with bruises on herself, some of the photos that we even have in house of Cassie and Diddy on red carpets and that sort. But as far as the jury's reaction to it, for the most part, they were again looking at either the exhibits, taking their notes down, or even just directly looking at Cassie herself. I feel like her testimony comes off very compelling, very credible. Even for the most part, if there's a question that, she doesn't necessarily have the answer to, she's very open about that. I don't remember. I don't recall. I don't remember exactly what he had said. She comes off very credible. And even Diddy himself sitting at the defense table, he's doing kind of like a tennis match look where he's looking, at ASA Emily Johnson, then he's looking at Cassie, he's looking at the jurors. And, as much as, I talk about Diddy very much, being a part of his defense, he definitely is, because he is very laser focused on the testimony that is coming out. He is very laser focused on what Cassie is saying. And if there is something that she had said, he's writing some notes down, he's handing it off to his defense attorneys. And so, yeah, it seems like for the most part, a lot of people are just very much intently listening to just what she all has to say. And a lot of people, for the most part, are just being laser focused on Cassie and everything that she has been describing throughout the duration of their on and off relationship for an 11-year time period.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's something our viewers have been asking about today, Elizabeth. How long were they together? And 11 years. I mean, it's a long time, and she was a very young woman when she got together with him. So there's a lot to go over through her testimony. I want to get back to what you were saying about Sean Combs, and you're saying he's a really active participant in his own defense, and of course he would be. I mean, his life is on the line here. He could, if he's convicted, spend theoretically the rest of his life behind bars in a federal prison. I was reading the other day that he was kind of just sitting back and looking at her intently at Cassie as she testified. You're saying it's like a tennis match. He's kind of looking back and forth, passing notes, things like that. Are you seeing any emotion from him, or is it just more like, okay, we've got to get down to business, and he's just kind of intently focused on this? I mean, are you seeing anything from him at all?
It's looking kind of like a little bit of both. There are times where his head is down, especially as they're talking about things like the number of escorts that were brought in, some of these other testimony that was brought in as far as just how often and frequent it is. For the most part, I've not seen too much of a reaction, even as far as, the physical assaults that are being talked about in this testimony. I'm seeing, for the most part, again, him just kind of either he's keeping his head down because he's jotting a note down, or maybe keeping his head down because his family is behind him, and in their respect, also kind of looking, at Cassie and Cassie's direction, looking at the exhibits that are displayed into the gallery. And so, for the most part, it does seem like he's not having too much of a reaction. Not sure if that's just a defense strategy that they're having, so that way it doesn't come off, possibly prejudicial or anything like that. But for the most part, he just seems to be just kind of looking on, not having any type of reaction as far as feeling bad or anything like that. But again, I'm not in.
Need a UGC video for your business? Find me and many other skilled creators on Fiverr. Or you could grab a top camera, add good lighting to make everything pop. Learn the latest trends, stay updated, videos change fast. Plan your content, be consistent and creative. Know your platforms, adapt your content. Each one's different. Edit like a pro, cut, trim, and polish. Make it shine, but not too shine. It's still user-generated content. Or just find your next creator on Fiverr.
Going to get back to your questions with our panel. We have some great guests here. Melba Pearson is a former prosecutor based down in Florida, and Tyler Bailey is a criminal defense attorney in South Carolina. So guys, first of all, before we get to more of the questions from our viewers, and they're sending in some really good ones, Melba, just some thoughts on what Elizabeth had to say.
Again, just continuing with the heartbreaking nature of all of this, because, much like Elizabeth, I was a huge Diddy fan back in the day. This is a couple that we followed on socials. And again, you have that glamorous image, and you really thought that this was, a great couple. And then, okay, they broke up, whatever. No clue the horrors that were going on behind closed doors, and everything that she endured is just, yeah, it's just gut wrenching. And it also kind of makes us kind of, I guess, as fans, feel guilty that, wait a minute, we were supporting this monster all along. I mean, I think folks kind of felt the same way in the wake of R. Kelly and all of those allegations coming out, and then his eventual criminal conviction. But I think it's just, again, it's a gut check in terms of worshiping celebrity, and sort of like who you follow and what the real story is, and the fact that they are human and subject to all the human frailties, both good, bad, and indifferent.
Yeah, I think this is a good reminder that no matter what you see, these pictures on social media, Tyler, whether you think Sean Combs is actually guilty of a federal crime, you never know what is going on behind closed doors. And obviously, it's very evident there was domestic violence here.
Yeah, and what I found really interesting about what Elizabeth just told us was the lack of emotion that she could see from the jurors. We know about Mr. Combs and these allegations, and they're hearing this horrendous testimony and live in that courtroom, in that solemn courtroom, by a competent AUSA who's prosecuting this case. And she said she did not see much emotion on the jurors. I don't want to read into that too much, but that could be that the jurors are really doing their job and taking in all evidence and not rushing to an early conclusion, that they could have been aware of what they were going to see and they weren't shocked by what they're seeing and hearing. But it's real early in the case, and we'll see what that means later on.
Yes, we will see. We will see. Let's get to more of your questions now. This one is from Corey Evans. Melba, do you believe this trial warrants the government spending millions of dollars solely to arrest him for participating in a few freak offs? I think the government would say it's more than a few freak offs.
Yeah. Um, I've heard a number of comments around that. And again, let's remember we all have sisters, mothers, aunts, women that we care about. And I think that it is critical that the government, whether it be on the state level or the federal level, takes these types of cases seriously. Because again, it's not just about a couple freak offs, it's about the fact that someone was brutalized and forced against their will to go different places and perform sex acts. That's not okay. So, yes, absolutely. I think that the government should be spending millions of dollars to let folks know that it doesn't matter how wealthy you are or how broke you are. If you are abusing people, you need to be held accountable. Period. End of story.
Our next question is from J Mac, Tyler. Diddy's lawyers in court documents has stated he has a tape on Cassie trying to extort Diddy for money. If she's caught doing that, what happens, or the tape proves exactly that? So this would be possible impeachment evidence.
Yeah, it'll hurt her credibility. Right now, you just heard Elizabeth say that she seems to be doing a good job giving her testimony, that she seems very believable. But during examination and possibly as impeachment evidence, if they pull out this video, I think it could show the jurors another side of her. And I think that's exactly what the defense is going to do. They have to show the jurors another side of Miss Ventura. As we said earlier, she's 8 months pregnant. She seems competent. She's a beautiful woman who went through horrendous things. And the defense has a job to defend Mr. Combs and hopefully, in their view, get him acquitted. And by doing that, they're going to have to pull out all punches with a velvet glove, with a hammer, or whatever they see fit. But they're going to bring this out.
I want to mention too, we've been asking our viewers some poll questions in the YouTube chat. So one of the poll questions we've asked is, do you believe Cassie Ventura's versions of events? 88% of the voters in the chat say yes. 12% so far are saying no, they don't believe it. So the lion's share of the voters believe Cassie. Our next question is from S. Lee. Melba, this one's for you. How does Cassie's testimony at trial affect her settlement agreement? And I'm assuming this is referring to the civil lawsuit. And of course, there was an NDA probably attached to that. So where they probably promised not to speak about this publicly and that type of thing. But oftentimes, NDAs, when it comes to testifying in court, that doesn't, that supersedes an NDA.
Yes, absolutely. So first off, whatever settlement agreement they had, one would assume the money's been paid or a down payment has been paid, whatever the case may be. So that is pretty much concluded. Now, in terms of the NDA and her being able to testify, again, a government subpoena is a government subpoena. If you disobey a government subpoena, you can be held in contempt of court. So the NDA does not hold water when it comes to being subpoenaed to speak in court about, a particular issue. However, how it would come into play is that the settlement may not necessarily be the feature or be discussed in the trial as a general premise. What's going to be discussed in the focus would be on all the underlying issues that were raised in the civil suit, so to speak.
Let's get to another question. This one is Wolves in France. Is Diddy in civilian clothes in court? I'll take that one very quickly. The answer is yes. So he is in civilian clothes. Tyler, I want you to add to that because Sean Combs' appearance in court is very different from what we're used to seeing from Sean Combs on the red carpet. He's not wearing a suit. He's got white hair because I guess he can't get hair dye in the MDC. He's wearing like a sweater and slacks. I mean, they're going for like the Mr. Rogers, I'm a dad, I'm in my mid to late 50s kind of look. So that's all by design.
Yeah, it's by design, but also, he is in the detention center right now, so he can't dye his hair. Pretty sure he's not used to living this quality of life that he's experiencing. He probably would prefer to have his hair dyed. If I'm just from the Sean Combs that we have grown to know through what he's portrayed to the media, and I think that's a big contrast to the star personality that he's portrayed over decades now, and what you're seeing of Miss Ventura, who clearly still looks like a star while pregnant. It could help Mr. Combs's case, having him come off a little more sympathetic. But I mean, Bill Cosby was America's uncle or grandpa for years, and that didn't help him.
This is true. And remember, he always on the Cosby Show wore those sweaters and everything, and then look what happened. So the clothes can mean something in court, but sometimes they don't. So let's go now to one of our updates from court, which I think is an interesting one that could play into one of our questions, Melba. One of the last things that Cassie Ventura testified to before they broke for lunch was the fact that she took Valium before freak-offs. And she was asked by Emily Johnson, when would you take Valium before a freak-off? And Cassie Ventura responded, when I had anxiety. Sean's driver was bringing me the Valium. It was Raheem, I think. So his driver, a staff member, is bringing her Valium. I would assume maybe prescribed, maybe not. Valium is something you don't really hear much about anymore. But one of the questions from one of the viewers was, Marissa Monroe is asking, do you think other people will be charged? And I'm assuming that's referencing staff of Sean Combs who are allegedly part of this RICO enterprise.
And again, got to give the legal answer. It depends. It depends what evidence they have against these individuals. It depends the statute of limitations. So if this is something where it's a matter of, okay, you're giving out, drugs without a prescription, right? That may be something that carries hypothetically a 5-year statute of limitations. If this is something that happened back in 2010, the statute of limitations is run. So that may be a situation where it doesn't necessarily make the most sense to go after somebody for that. And also there's the argument of knowledge, because again, if the person was handed a bag, hey, give this to Cassie, and they didn't know necessarily what was in it, that's a little bit different than the driver going out and actually procuring the drugs from a dealer and bringing it to Cassie. So it all depends on what the facts are. But in all likelihood, unless somebody provided very material assistance in terms of moving people or something like that, they're likely, I don't think anyone else is likely going to be charged. And again, to refer back to Bradford's point from earlier, the question would be, if they end up cooperating with the prosecution, then that's another way to avoid criminal charges.
Let's go to another question. This has been something that's come up quite a bit. Other celebrities and, other celebrities who may have been privy to these things, may have been a part of these things. And really everything we're hearing right now, Tyler, it sounds like this is Sean Combs, his romantic partners, and then sex workers brought into this. So we're not hearing really about other celebrities being brought into this, but